Welcome to the 5th episode of Raising Rebecca Books, the birth of a publishing house. This is the audio story of me, Rebecca Seitz, building a traditional, royalty-paying publishing house from the ground up, told to you as it unfolds. I have a story to share today that happened during the course of me raising the money for this business, which is an ongoing endeavor. Yes, I mentioned money. The thing is, building a business requires it. And if you don't have any, or you don't have enough, what does that mean? Are you sunk before you even try to swim? Some are, yes. Did you know that 38% of all startups fail due to lack of funding? Now, there are a gajillion articles in entrepreneur magazines and sites that focus on problems like effective management and proper organizational structure, product testing, identifying and reaching the target market, and all of those are important. But in the words of the memorable Jerry Maguire, "Show me the money!" My story may not be as crazy as how Jerry Maguire got to keep his client in that movie, but something interesting did happen during one of my funder luncheons, and I thought it might be helpful to share it with you.
You're listening to Raising Rebecca Books, the birth of a publishing house on the 1C Story Network. 1C is made possible in part by the support of the following sponsor.
A while back, I spent 2 years writing CEO profiles for an entrepreneur magazine. I learned a ton, but very rarely did they spell out exactly how they funded their businesses. On the rare occasion that they said anything on the subject of money, it was usually one of two ways. Either they had their own money from generational family wealth or a good-paying, top-of-the-chain job in their field, or they got venture capital. I too funded the formation of my early small businesses. It never required a big outlay of funds, and the work generated revenue fairly quickly, so I could pay myself back. Basically, I just needed to float a few $1,000s for a few months. I could and I did manage that. But the startup costs for Rebecca Books are considerably more than a few $1,000s. Considerably, as in a whole heck of a lot more. Beyond my personal capabilities more, given that I have, 2 teenagers who have this weird habit of wanting to eat daily and be clothed. Also, I'm 46 years old. 18-hour days of doing 5 people's jobs in a startup hit very differently than they did in my 20s. I'm going to need to fund staff more quickly than I did in those days. So, how about trying the other way those CEOs funded their startups, venture capital? Well, only 2.3% of all VC money in this country goes to women-owned startups. 2.3%. That is insane. And the time that it takes to even apply for that incredibly long shot is considerable. I know because I did go down that path with one of my business ventures for a while. I spent an entire year meeting with a whole lot of men who like to take a whole lot of my time and do a whole lot of talking, and then send their money to businesses that were founded by guys who take morning ice plunges and live in Silicon Valley and boast about partying in Ibiza. I guess their kids are being fed and prepped for school by the wife, girlfriend, or nanny who also feeds them dinner and puts them to bed each evening. But regardless, courting venture capital is most likely not a good use of my time. Instead, I devised 2 ways to financially support the work of 1C and Rebecca Books. A person can either become an investor in the business, or there is a nonprofit that supports certain 1C and Rebecca Books projects that meet that nonprofit's mission. Since deciding to launch RB, I've been reaching out to female friends. Over phone calls, Zooms, morning walks, brunches, and lunches, we talk about their businesses and mine, and we find ways to help each other build. But what happened at a lunch earlier this week? Well, come with me to a swanky restaurant near the water here in Naples, Florida, and I'll tell you all about it. The dining establishment I was in was founded about 25 years ago by a famous football coach and is one of my go-to places for delicious food in an upscale atmosphere. I knew this meal would be different because I always order the burger, and I wouldn't be doing so this time. See, I've been following a vegetarian diet for roughly a month, and I am thoroughly enjoying the way my body feels less inflamed and my brain is clearer than it's been in years. So while burgers are my favorite food on the planet, they're not currently worth the impact that they make on my body. I need my brain and my body to be working as well as they possibly can in order to bring the best of me to this business venture. But it turned out that my experience at the restaurant would be wholly different from all the times before in a more profound way than whether I was eating meat or not. This meal, like most of my meals out since launching Rebeca Books, was with women who love the idea of the publishing house and are in a position to financially support the work. On this day, I was dining with two women. Now, one of them is my business mentor. The other is a mom friend. Prior to this meal, they did not know each other. I'd brought them together. The elder of the group got to the restaurant first and, not liking the table at which they had placed her, asked to be moved to a corner table where we could speak with a modicum of privacy. We could still be seen by the entire dining room, but not easily heard. I arrived next, hugged my mentor, and pretty soon my mom friend arrived as well. Because they didn't know each other yet, each woman shared the condensed version of her life story with the other. Let me stop here and tell you that just listening to their stories renewed my admiration for all women who are making their way through this world. The barriers we overcome as if it's just walking down a sidewalk instead of hurdling female-only barriers blocking employment in our chosen profession and financing our businesses, the boards of authority that have not one single woman on them. This is our life experience, and we keep going in the face of it, putting one foot in front of the other, doing what we do, getting it done, all of us, all the time. Anyway, we were probably about an hour into the meeting, and the elder of us had just shared a funny story that caused my mom friend and I to throw back our heads in laughter. As we quieted back down, I became aware of it. The attention from the other tables. Tables that were filled with men in suits. Now, at first, I assumed it was our laughter. We hadn't been that loud, but this is an upscale restaurant where people tend to speak in hushed tones, so maybe the very presence of hilarity was enough to draw attention. But our lunch went on for another hour, and the awareness of the other tables kept coming. Glances our way that I caught out of the corner of my eye. I pondered it. We're all nice-looking women, but we're not bombshells. And the looks, they didn't feel sexual in nature. They felt like something else that I couldn't quite put my finger on. Eventually, our conversation arrived at the main reason for our gathering, to discuss potential financial support for Rebeca Books. I pulled a document from my purse that visually represented the corporate structure here, as there are multiple business entities working together to bring these stories of women, ethnic minorities, and rural communities into fruition. I shared that visual with the two women, and we all discussed it. Now, this took like 2, maybe 3 minutes. Then I tucked the document back into the file folder in my purse, which sat on the carpeted floor by my chair. As I raised back up, I glanced out toward the rest of the dining room, and I kid you not, there were men peering at the document, and then boldly staring at my dining companions. And that is when the nature of their attention hit me. Curiosity. And the reason for that curiosity landed in my brain right on the heels of that revelation. Do you remember the montage at the end of the Barbie movie? That part where it's home movies of women just being women at home, laughing, playing, hugging, applying makeup, swimming in the backyard pool, just being ourselves at home. I remember sitting in the theater when that montage played while Billie Eilish's haunting lyrics filled the air. There we were, up on that big screen, sisters. Every one of us in those seats knew every woman in those videos. That's who we are. When we're not having to overcome barriers erected only for us, when we're not having to be on our guard, we're easy and free, and it is exquisitely beautiful. I realized, rising back up into my seat at that restaurant, that my friends and I were just being, out loud, in a public restaurant filled with businessmen. We were easy with each other because it was just us women at the table in the corner. We were being at that lunch the way we are at lunch in our homes, the way those women in the Barbie montage are, laughing, sharing, building, planning, just enjoying. 3 women discussing business. No man at the table and no attention given to those in the rest of the room. Nobody measuring their, okay, well, you get the idea. No competition. It was just easy collaboration. And for a lot of the men in that room, in this conservative 89.5% white town where the average male is 65 years old, it must have been a very strange sight. I've been thinking of it ever since. I wanted to tell you about it here so that the moment is captured in the story of Rebecca Book's formation, but it also feels important to point out that there is an alternative to cutthroat American capitalism. How we go about our business is as important as the business itself. How we write our contracts, treat our investors and donors, assemble our teams, run our operations, find our funding, it's all a representation of perhaps an unknown reality for others. For men, I mean. For women like me who were raised in the way of businessmen. Our way, the way of women, it works. According to the Boston Consulting Group analysis, businesses that are run by women generate 10% more revenue in 5 years than businesses that are run by men, even though women only get half as much funding across the board as men. And for those investors that do put money into women-run businesses, the return on investment in female-led companies is twice that of male-owned businesses. Plus, the employees in women-run companies report higher job satisfaction rates than those in companies run by men. There's clearly another way to go about business than the one that has been dominant for decades. According to the numbers, it's a better way. A woman's way. This is why one of the 2 genres we are publishing in Rebeca Books is business, written by women 40 and over. The marketplace needs a trove of female business knowledge in order to capture and communicate this different way of doing business. If you are one of those women and you're ready to share your knowledge with the world, please get in touch. We want to make sure that the lessons you've learned and the ways that you've honed are transmitted to the current and coming population of business people. We want to know how you built your business while raising kids and running your household, and just being you. I'm betting there probably wasn't an ice plunge or an Ibiza party in the mix. In the meantime, if you want to support this work, yes, please get in touch. I've got a new favorite lunch place for wise women doing business out loud.
You've been listening to Raising Rebecca Books, the birth of a publishing house from the 1C Story Network. Subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts and learn more at RebecaBooks.com. That's REBECA books.com.
The 1C Story Network, for the love of stories.